Okay, it is 6:30, so I will call to order a meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. It is Monday, April 10th, 2023, and we are at the OSD Innovation Center at Oregon High School. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak?
Here.
Ms. Garrison? Dr. Lakuta?
Here.
Mr. LeBrun?
Here.
Mr. Pankratz?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Flanagan?
Here, board does have a quorum. Heather is out of town for business, so she couldn't be here tonight, and it is a special meeting tonight because it is Mr. LeBrun's last meeting after 6 years on the Oregon School Board, so we will have some special words here at the end of the meeting. I do have proof of notice, so Katie has noticed this meeting, so we are in good shape there. In our agenda tonight, we do have quite a few action items. We will have normal committee reports, and then the board will go into closed session and not return. So I will entertain a motion to approve that agenda. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Consent calendar tonight. We do have the normal items, and then we do have some resignations and retirements. I did want to mention that Janelle Tom Schneider, our school counselor at the high school, is retiring after 28 years of service. So I want to thank Janelle for all her time and service and care for all of our students over all those years. She's meant a lot to this building, so we really want to make sure she hears our thank you. And then we do have the following donations. $5,000 from the Oregon Area Food Pantry for food service balances for students who applied for free and reduced lunch and do not qualify. $25 from Matthew and Heather Young, a scholarship for OMS Visioneer field trip. $180 from the Oregon PTO for adult admissions to Prairie View Cave of Mounds second grade field trip. $500 from Joyce and Steve Dieter, donation to the Oregon Band Advocates. $2,500 from Adicio USA as a donation to Brooklyn in honor of Stephen Moreland's retirement. $300 from Susie Chung on behalf of Jake Chung for the Oregon High School Band Activity Account. $300 from Fidelity Charitable for the Fritz Classroom, and then $15,000 from the Fans 5K Run, which is the Allison Norland Scholarship. So thank you all to those individuals and entities for their donations to the Oregon School District. It is very meaningful, so we really appreciate that. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second because there is a resignation. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to B, information items, public comment. Is there anyone registered for public comment? Is there anyone here for public comment? One more time, is there anyone here for public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to 2, OEA report. The OEA is here tonight, but they do not have anything that they'd like to speak about. So we will move on to 3, student report. And we have one of our students here, Peyton. Welcome, the floor is yours.
So we've actually had a lot go on here in the last month since we've been able to have a meeting and share that with you guys. So I want to start all the way back. We had a solo and ensemble festival in which our choir, band, and orchestra students competed. And if they did not compete, they put on a performance for the community, including their classes. Along with that, we also had some students go to the regional German speaking competition, as well as some advance on to our state competition. Today and this week, we are hosting a Fine Arts Festival week. We had preview shows of our one-act Humpty Dumpty today, as well as a special assembly and performance this morning. And I've heard possibly some other things throughout this week. Spring sports are off to a great start with the track meet going well and some first place competition medals coming home with people, as well as our soccer program with both of our teams coming home with big wins last Thursday and on to play again tomorrow. We've also had our ACT scores for juniors come back this last week, bar a few of them that somehow got lost, but we should have all of them back by the end of this month if everything goes according to plan. In this last month, we've also had our Spring Fling Dance, which was a big hit. We sold over 300 tickets, and we are looking to continue spring dances, hopefully, through the next couple of years. And then we're starting to sell prom tickets and looking forward to our prom here in the beginning of May, which we are thinking will have even bigger attendance numbers than the Spring Fling.
Great, thank you, Peyton. Lots of busy activities at the high school. All right, moving on to C, action items. The first tonight is the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Resolution. So I think Sarah is going to come up to the microphone, and I will turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Actually, I think Sarah Tomaszewicz, our food service director, or school nutrition director, will be able to explain everything quite thoroughly. So I'm going to pass it right to her.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. It's very loud tonight. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. It's always nice to be here and to see you guys every few months. So thank you. So tonight we're asking for you to sign our WeSNP Co-op 603, I think it is. So just to give you some background about what that is, it is a buying group that helps us secure better pricing for our food so that we can purchase higher quality and cheaper food for our kids. In doing so, we are emphasizing on nutrition, environmental sustainability, local economies, and animal welfare as part of the co-op's mission towards making food healthier for kids across the state. So a few updates about what we've been able to do with this co-op. We've increased our meal participation. We are currently serving 250 breakfasts per day and about 1,700 lunches per day. We have been able to eliminate some unwanted ingredients in our meals, including some nitrates and nitrites, some additives, some food coloring, things like that. So overall cleaner label items. And it hasn't been perfect because the industry is a little lagging still from COVID-related issues, but we're getting there. And then we've also been able to increase our focus on farm to school and more creative menu items like the Around the World Days. So being able to be a part of this co-op has been a great support to our district and our program. And over the last year, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the advisory committee, so I was able to help with the buying group procurement process as well as the farm to school. So it's been an awesome program for us, not only for the networking and better food, but also pricing. It's very minimal cost-wise to be a part of the program. It costs us $300 a year, and with rebates last year we saved over $6,000. So the cost is not necessarily that important. So, questions?
All right, I'll entertain a motion to put that on the floor, and then we can have any discussion or questions of Sarah.
I'll move that we discussed.
Is there a motion or second to that motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions of Sarah or discussion on the motion to approve us being part of this co-op? And it says here we're one of 59 school districts in the state of
Yes.
Wisconsin to do this, and it costs us $300. So go ahead, Anna.
So if I heard you correctly, this is better nutrition standards, cleaner labels, sustainably sourced, lower prices. Why on earth would any school ever not be part of this?
I am uncertain. We're constantly growing. Every time we talk to a new school who is not a part of us, they request to join.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tim.
Sarah, what do you think the biggest challenge is? What are you really trying to skin this year in this food service program?
Yeah, so this year, I think month by month, it's been a different challenge. It's been interesting. At the beginning of the year, we were focused on trying to staff our department a little bit better. Now we have that. So now, because the industry has caught up a little bit since the beginning of the year the food industry was lagging in staffing, and the storms have brought in weird weather, so food was not able to come to us. So that's getting a little bit better. So right now, my focus is, okay, now that we're a little bit more back on track, how can I make the food a little bit healthier and get back to the products that we want to be serving?
All right, any other questions of Sarah? Okay, Mary, your motion was to approve this co-op agreement correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we have a second. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'd also like to mention that Sarah just recently completed her master's degree program, and we're all very happy for her.
All right, the second action item is the Dane County New Teacher Project Shared Services Agreement for 2022-2023. Back to you, Leslie, or John.
And it's Mr. Tanner who will be sharing this with us.
Would you like me to save your voice and just move to the presenter? John, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Wow, you really did turn up the sensitivity on the mic. Never mind what I said before about getting really close to the mic. You'll be fine. All right, so yeah, this is the shared services contract for Dane County New Teacher Project. This is something that we've done every year for quite a few years, and this is a really essential component of how we do mentoring and induction for our new teachers. So it's a 6603 agreement, so it doesn't actually require board approval, but Dane County New Teacher Project likes us to get board approval for this from all the different districts. So the cost is $10,412 for us for the year. The costs are prorated, you can see on the last page, depending on the size of the district. So we all combine forces and get a really excellent product from the consortium. So it involves a lot of services, both like new teacher forums. It also has a number of programs throughout the year for like me, the program director, for our coaches, instructional coaches, for our for our new teacher, our full release mentor, who's Cindy Hedstrom, and like a program induction planning retreat that happens in the spring of every year to plan for the next year. They do surveys of all the new teachers, disaggregate the data for us, tell us what's working, what's not. It's a great organization and a great product. So that's basically it. We do this every year, and we'd like you to approve it because we would really like to continue in that cooperative agreement.
Okay, thank you, John. I'll entertain a motion and then we can have discussion, if someone would like to do that.
I can do that.
All right, we have a motion to approve the new teacher project contract. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. The floor is open for discussion or questions. Go ahead, Leslie.
John, can you tell me some of the feedback that you've received from new teachers having gone through this process over the last several years?
Yeah, the feedback is really good, and some of the feedback we've gotten, there's two ways. One is sort of anonymized things from the survey that gets sent out from the cooperative or from the New Teacher Project consortium, and it talks about the level of support that we provide through our full release mentor and through their programming. And the other part that we've actually gotten, when Leslie and I have done interviews with teachers, they're the second and basically the like new hire interviews that happen the second or recently third year of employment. One of the things that always stands out from people is the support that they got as a new educator from our induction program. So this supports that, and teachers feel really welcome and really well supported because teaching is very difficult, and especially hopping right into it. So the supports that we've been able to have that this provides us with are partially directly to the teachers. So they go to some of the new teacher forums, which is great because they get to sort of network with new teachers from other districts, and also get some of that training and support from Heather Lott, who runs this. You may recognize the name or not, but she does a lot of facilitation. She's a former Madison educator. And then the other thing that it does is it provides training for the instructional coaches and the new teacher mentor, the full release mentor. And so it does indirect support for teachers on that because they have tools and protocols and programs and everything that kind of supports the people who are supporting the teachers and gives us the tools to do that. So the feedback from teachers has been really great, and that's actually one of the things we hear also when we're interviewing for new teachers is what kind of support do you have for new teachers? And so it's always great to be able to tell them like, well, we've got a full release mentor and we've got instructional coaches and we have new educator orientation that happens for 4 days in the fall, and we're part of Dane County New Teacher Project. So those are kind of the things that we get feedback on.
So I'm hearing this definitely supports our retention and retaining.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Tim.
You mentioned a couple of times the full release mentor.
Yes.
Is that essentially an account manager who brings new things to us?
Sorry.
Or what is that exactly?
No, that is a teacher who has been released, we call it full release, they've been released from their teaching duties in order to be a mentor to our teachers. So Cindy Hedstrom was a teacher at Prairie View for many years. People before this, Laura Brudos actually started it, and so she was released from her teaching duties for a few years, and then went back to being a Spanish teacher at the middle school. We probably don't even really need to call it a full release anymore, except there's a distinction between some other districts they don't have full release mentors, meaning they have many mentors, but it's sort of like, oh, you're going to teach one fewer classes so that you can go mentor people in your building part-time. We've gone with you're a dedicated mentor, full release mentor, meaning that's your only duty, which as we've talked to other districts, that really has, they were like, oh, that would be really nice. Because inevitably when a teacher is only has partial release from their duties to mentor somebody, they're not as flexible with their time to be able to meet people when they have it, and it just kind of gets overwhelming. So a lot of the districts have seen that full release program, if you can do it, is a much better way to support new educators because of the singular focus that they're able to have, their dedication of all their energies to it, and their flexibility to meet with teachers. So sorry, it's kind of an inside baseball term, but that's what that means.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mary, go ahead.
So just to follow up on that, so full release, does the individual teacher, there's only one for our district, in any given year, do they then, they support all grade levels and does that work fairly well?
Yeah, it has actually really well. We're on our third one, and it's been really a great program. Obviously, we select the people very carefully for being able to have the personality, the training, that sort of, and the experience to do that. And it has worked really well. Sometimes you would think that, if you've only taught elementary, it might be difficult for high school, but we've found there's a lot of universal experiences for new teachers that are much more common to new people entering the field, or new people who are experienced teachers but maybe new to us. We offer some differentiated support depending on whether you're brand new to the profession or whether you are an experienced teacher but new to us. We kind of differentiate that a little bit more. Support obviously to the new educators, but we find that new educators have way more in common than any difference that their grade level or content area represents. So it's been really effective to do that. And what's really nice, the reason this is so effective is because there are evidence-based and research-based tools. They all have cool acronyms that I won't use right now, but they're a collaborative assessment log and things like that, where they're tools that are used that you can basically guide the person through ways to gather data and provide feedback and provide support and help the new educators through thinking about their instruction and thinking about how their classroom is working. And so it's really helpful to have these kind of resources to support the mentor in doing that so that they can apply that to all the educators they work with. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Just a couple from me, John. One, and maybe this is a Gina question too, but I think we've talked about this statistic, and I think it bears repeating, just in terms of if a new teacher can make it through the first 5 years. Can you speak to that? I think those are really important statistics.
Yeah, so what we've learned is that there is a very difficult retention rate for teachers in their first 5 years, and the research shows that one way to help teachers continue, because if they make it through 5 years, then I forget the statistic, but it's very high, 8-10 times more likely to stay in the profession. And one of the key components that has been identified is having a mentor. And so, and it's definitely a piece that we talk about not only in the interview process, but when we recruit teachers through the salary process as well, that we have the full-time mentor, we have the educator effectiveness coaches, we have job-alike mentors, we have instructional coaches, and that is the feedback we consistently hear, as it's one of the reasons that especially teachers in their first 3 years choose Oregon, because they know that they'll have that support in their building and in the district.
And then my other question is, in terms of, we went through the referendum and we had professional learning. And so is it accurate that we have kind of a new teacher track that really makes sure we reinforce them going to these things? And if we know that this is an effective practice, that they are doing that?
Yeah, so we have our pathways of highly effective practices and educational equity. We also have sort of the embedded like whole child and personalized learning, but there's another whole pathway, which is new educator. So usually 40 hours last year and this year, or this year and next year, 32 hours. But what we tell the new educators is you don't have to choose anything because all of your hours are pre-planned for you by the mentor. And so they provide the full pathway for the year. The teachers don't have to do any figuring it out. It's all pre-planned for you, and it's also very strategic. So part of that is completed during the new educator orientation, which happens in August before the in-service days that all staff attend. The rest of it is actually during the year. Some of these are these new teacher forums through CNTP. Others are sessions that like Cindy and some other teachers provide that are very timely and strategic. For example, hey, here's student or parent-teacher conferences are coming up. Here's how to prepare for one. Here's how to run one. Or the quarter's ending, grades are going to be due. Here's some steps that you need to take about submitting grades, filling out report cards, that sort of thing. And so they're throughout the year offered with that just-in-time support on topics that are really relevant to teachers at that time.
Great, thank you. All right. Seeing no further questions, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you,
Thank you.
John. All right, moving on to issuance of 2023-2024 contracts, starting with teachers. So I will turn it over to Ms. Jonan.
Thank you. So this is in your packet. I would like for the board to approve us issuing contracts to the educators who are covered by the Oregon Education Association, or OEA, bargaining unit. By state law, we have to have those contracts to teachers by May 15th, and then they have until June 15th to return them. So looking for the board approval tonight to issue those. I do have 2 changes to those contracts to propose to the board, and I did talk with the OEA about those changes as well. So the first is looking to increase what we call our liquidated damages clause. And what that means is under contract law, the parties can agree to what the penalty is if someone breaches the contract. There are parameters around that. It has to be reasonable, meaning that if it were to go to court and be challenged, that we have to show that we're really looking to recoup our costs, that it isn't so outrageous. Because really, essentially, people are agreeing in advance as to what a reasonable penalty would be. And so looking at what our neighboring districts do and what our costs are when we lose people, I feel really comfortable that this change is reasonable. And how it works is that if a teacher signs and returns the contract to us, and then they decide that they want to break that contract and go somewhere else, that during what we're proposing is during the month of June and July, that it would be a $500 penalty. So there is no change there. It's been that way for at least the 10 years I've been here, probably longer than that. The change that we're proposing is that if they give their notice in August or during the school year, that we're asking for at least 4 weeks notice. And if they are able to give us 4 weeks notice, we would stay with that $500 penalty. If they are not able to give us 4 weeks notice, then we would have a $1,000 penalty. There's a caveat that you'll see in the contract for health reasons. We don't assess a penalty if someone has to leave us for health reasons because we know that's not their choice. So we did have 2 mid-year resignations this year that gave us 2 weeks notice. And that was really, really hard. And so our costs also increase when we have short notice because we have to advertise in more places. So that's an increased cost to us. We have to interview in very short periods of time. And we often have to interview more candidates. So because we're always trying to find the best person. So just looking to try to recoup some of those costs and to give people an incentive that we understand if people need to break their contracts. We're just looking to have as much notice as possible so that we can replace them with excellent people. In terms of what the OEA and I talked about with this change is their position is, of course, they don't want to support increasing a penalty for people, but they certainly understand the position that we're in. From my lens, it's hard on other teachers when teachers give short notice because we need someone to help fill in those gaps. And I would say where I'm very grateful the OEA and the district are focused is that we know our number one goal is to keep people here and focus on those retention and recruitment strategies that we talked about in the referendum, and you'll hear more about with our state interviews. The other change that we are asking to make is really for the HR department to help us streamline. We have really a 3-tiered system that's a little bit complicated, but when in the past, under collective bargaining agreements, we could bargain this. Now we're prohibited from bargaining it. So we have most of our teachers go with 24 pays. So we pay twice a month, 12 months a year. So 2 times 12, 24 pays. We do have 9 teachers that choose to get paychecks during the school year only and not be paid in the summer. So what we're looking for is that we will grandparent those teachers in as long as they want to be on 20 pays. But really for new hires, looking to have everybody on a 24 pay cycle just makes it easier from an HR standpoint. The deductions are all the same, and it really helps us with quality control. And so the OEA's position is as long as that we give current people, that we don't change current people, that they're supportive of the new process.
Okay. Any clarifying questions for Gina before I entertain a motion? Go ahead, Troy.
So first of all, just a statement. Historically, I would have always removed myself from this type of agenda item, but because of the conflict of interest I had when Kelly was an employee here, but she is no longer an employee. She has resigned, so I no longer have that conflict of interest. But my question, Gina, is regarding the liquidated damages. Are those amounts and the timeframes pretty typical for Dane County schools?
Yes, thank you. So it is very typical that there is an increased amount in August than there is for June and July. And I have seen districts that have gone as high as $6,000. So I would say most districts are in the $1,000 range. A neighboring district to us is $3,000. And now this first year I saw $6,000. So I feel really reasonable in our proposal.
Any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion. If anyone wants to move approval of the issuance of teacher contracts.
I'll move to approve the issuance of teacher contracts.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Happy to have you back at the table, Troy, for all of these discussions. Sorry to see Kelly leave. But all right, next on the agenda is issuance of the 2023-2024 licensed non-represented contract. So back to Gina.
Thank you. So we do a similar timeline for the non-represented folks. So just to give people a refresher, those are professionals that are licensed by DPI but are not included in the OEA bargaining unit. So for example, our nurses, our school psychologists, our occupational therapists, etc. And so looking to make the same change for them with the same language. And I should clarify that of the 9 people we have on 20 pays, some are in the OEA and some are licensed non-represented. So we have 9 total of our professional staff.
All right, any questions specifically to clarify licensed non-represented contracts? Okay, I will entertain a motion to issue those contracts. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to 5, issuance of 2023-2025 administrator contracts. Back to you, Gina.
So looking for the board to approve issuing the administrator contracts. The administrator contracts would contain the same change in the liquidated damages clause once those contracts are up. If you remember, under state law, teachers and licensed non-represented professionals that are covered by DPI, we are only allowed by law to do 1-year contracts, whereas administrator contracts are 2-year contracts. So if we are in the middle of a contract for an administrator, we would not change that liquidated damages clause. It would go into effect when we issue the new contract.
Okay. Any clarifying questions about administrator contracts? Go ahead, Leslie.
So on the liquidated damages section of the administrators, is that the same amounts, or are we looking at different amounts for these?
Thank you. So right now, everyone is $500, and we would be looking to have everybody be the $500 in June and July, or the $1,000 in August, or less than 4 weeks notice. And so what our thinking was in August is that we start the new next year, the first day of the contract year is August 27th. So if you resigned August 1st, it wouldn't be 4 weeks notice. So we just wanted to standardize that for all of the groups.
Go ahead, Tim.
Is it typical at other districts that the amount is the same?
What I am starting to see more is that the administrator amount is higher. And my sense would be, the thinking is that the advertising costs are just more expensive for administrators. Luckily, we have had a wonderful retention of our administrators. So I can't remember, I don't know if I've ever had anyone pay liquidated damages in the 10 years I've been here for administrators. We've been very fortunate.
Okay, where's Wood?
Yes, I hope I
Thank
did
you.
not.
Thank you
yes.
for saying that. I mean, to Tim's point, is that something, I know you probably want to just get this as standard, but is that something you potentially would look at in the future in terms of a graduated, liquidated damage based on the amount of the contract or position?
Absolutely. We certainly recruiting costs are getting more and more expensive as we have a tighter market because when I started, actually the applicants had to pay for a job fair. The employer did not. Now our costs have tripled to go to job fairs and the applicants don't have to pay, which is just an interesting change. And advertising on different websites and job boards are more expensive and we have to advertise in more places. And I do see rationale for charging administrators more. At the same time, since we haven't expended those costs, it felt more reasonable just to keep them the same across the board.
Yeah, let's not get into a transfer portal environment here in public schools. All right, any other clarifying questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion to issue the administrator contracts for the next school year.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. All right, you are able to issue contracts. Thanks, everyone. And thank you for all your work on that. I know that's a big job. All right, moving on to action item 6, resolution to support public school funding. I will turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. So, as we all know, in Oregon, we stand for so many positive things, whether it's our values that, really support the decision-making process throughout our district, or it's our vision as articulated in the Portrait of a Graduate policy. All of the things that you hear about in the superintendent's report, the fact that our students are receiving such a high quality, well-rounded education that values so many aspects to growing up into a positive, educated citizen. It's really fortunate that we're able to do that for our students, and it's really due to the generosity of the community, the support of the community. Because if we didn't have the support of the community through the referendum that passed in November, we'd be faced with some very challenging decisions this year. Because we all have heard a large amount of information about the fact that there's been a 0% increase in per pupil funding from the state. So our students here in Oregon are continuing with all of the programs and services that have become so important to the community. But there are communities throughout Wisconsin where that simply isn't the case. And there's even communities throughout the Badger Conference where that simply isn't the case. And things, now that the ESSER funding is coming to an end, and there is no There isn't at this point in time a super positive outlook regarding what will be coming from the state, although we're all holding out hope. And that's one of the reasons that we're proposing this resolution tonight. We know how important public education is. And we know what it does for our citizenry. We know what it does for our young people and the choices that they're able to make in their life because of their positive public education. And we also know that without funding, we simply cannot continue to do the things that are done in Wisconsin for our kids. And so we are coming on to budget season. And I think it's very important for the people who are supporters of public education to be public with that support, because the people who make the decisions regarding school funding for the state need to understand what is at stake and what schools need to be able to provide the high quality experience that we are able to provide throughout Wisconsin and is actually very much in jeopardy. Consequently, it has been prepared for your consideration tonight, a resolution for the board to consider and perhaps vote on that would show the support for public education and what we need, schools in Wisconsin need from the budgeting process in order to be able to do well by our students. And those are points 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the resolution. Would you like to talk next?
Sure. What I'd like to do before I say a few words is I want to turn it over to Ms. Jonan so she can kind of talk through the legality of us being able to do this resolution and how it is not advocating for a particular party or political, that this is really a resolution that's about what the Oregon School District believes we need to support our students, and what we've promised our community in the referendum process, that we would work hard to make sure we got money from the state so our taxpayers would not continue to have to carry the burden alone for funding public education here in this community. So I'm going to turn it over to Gina.
Thank you. And so just to give everyone a reminder, because I know we really have tried to ingrain in everyone that we cannot, using district resources, advocate for political candidates or in support or opposition to a referendum. And so just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that difference. And I have consulted with WASB on this because I want to make sure that we are meeting our state law and our board policy obligations. And so just as a reminder that we are not able to support, oppose, or endorse a particular candidate. And so it would not be appropriate to say, we support Governor Evers or we support Robin Voss, right? Those are particular candidates. So we're not able to do that with district resources. That's my focus right now. We're not able to advocate on behalf of or in opposition to a school referendum for funding. And that's true under our board policy as well. But using district resources, we are certainly able to inform, and we are certainly able to educate and voice support for public funding. And so just want everyone to be really cognizant of that. That is really different than the First Amendment rights that you have outside of work or using non-district resources. So all of you on your own time as individuals are able to engage in the political process and exercise your freedom of speech. So really just want to focus on district resources, not able to support or oppose a political candidate or a particular referendum. But having this type of resolution would be appropriate.
Before we get into discussing the resolution, does anybody have any clarifying questions for Gina about our authority to do this resolution or the legality of us doing this resolution? Go ahead, Mary.
Can you distinguish between a resolution and a referendum?
So a resolution is a tool that the board uses to speak as one voice. So if a resolution is approved, then it would be appropriate to say, on behalf of the Oregon School Board, the Oregon School Board supports X, which is in the resolution. So the referendum would be one we just had, like a capital or an operational. So vote yes for this measure that's on the ballot, or vote no for this measure that's on the ballot. That would be advocating for a referendum. But this is really a means for you to be able to say that we're speaking as a board, because otherwise you're always welcome to speak as individuals. But before you speak on behalf of the board, it's best practice to have a vote and make sure it is the majority of the board that is supportive or opposing to the topic at hand. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
I have a question about one of the four items, not specifically about the legality. So number 3, and the reason I'm asking this is there was some ambiguity that people have talked about our referendum language. And so I want to make sure I understand what this says. It says include an increase in the revenue limits to at least $1,000 per student over the next 2 years. So does that mean it could be 500 and then 1,000? So we end at 1,000? Does it mean $1,000 per year? So the second year it's $2,000? What exactly is it asking for here? And again, just to ground my understanding, how much money is this intended to represent per year?
So I will turn that over to Mr. Weiland in terms of how much money. Put him on the spot. He can do the calculations in his head. I've seen it.
So the number of students we have are about 3,800 students, so $1,000 per. But I'm not clear exactly on your other question whether I think it's $1,000 over the 2 years is how it was intended.
Yes.
So
I don't understand. I still don't understand.
so 500 this year, 500 the second year would be 1,000, in whatever combination that the state decided to do that. So,
Okay.
So it'd be 1,000 times 3,800, which I think is
Over the
3.8
next 2 years, so about $3.8 million.
Correct.
Over the next 2 years.
Correct.
That would come from the state.
Yes.
Well, it's a revenue limit, so that would allow us to tax. Theoretically, not theoretically, hopefully, there would be state aid that would come with that would help balance that from a taxpayer's perspective, a property taxpayer's perspective.
So is this talking about increasing the revenue limit so we could tax our property taxpayers more?
Potentially, there is there's two ways to increase revenue, and sometimes people get them confused. One is the revenue limit, which is a calculation which allows us to access those funds. They may come from state aid,
Yes.
they may come from property taxpayers. More likely, what I've heard is, and sometimes this is where confusion starts, the Republicans who control the legislature are more apt to increase the categorical aid, which acts the same as the revenue limit, but that means exactly what you're asking is the money comes from the state in that
Right.
regard.
It's about distributing
Right.
the budget deficit, and that's why I'm clarifying. I'm being a little bit of a stickler about
Right.
it because I don't want to sign anything that says we have the ability to tax our property tax owners more money. I would rather it say we're looking to have some of the budget surplus distributed of at least $1,000 per student over the next 2 years. That's all I'm, and I don't think this says that. And so I would be concerned about signing off on, because if I were watching and I were a property taxpayer, I'm not sure I would want my school board to say they could tax me more at this moment, considering where we've been in the last 6 months.
So my understanding, this resolution came from a bunch of school districts that are doing the same thing.
That was my next question.
Yeah, and so it really depends on where that district is in relationship to their funding mix. We would benefit absolutely more by having the categorical. Some other districts would perhaps benefit more from having the revenue limit.
And this is a one-size-fits-all.
I think that was the
statement.
intent. So I don't know if we could modify that slightly so that we could make that more clear for you.
That's my main concern. The other concern that I have is that we talk about the next 2 years, and after the next 2 years, if it stops, we're going to be right where we were today.
Yeah, the intent was to obviously continue. here's the problem, right? It's a 2-year budget, so you can only
Yes.
advocate for those 2 years.
I got you.
But
Okay.
the hope would be to kind of get back to the olden days.
Sure.
When there was like a cost of living kind of escalator, so to speak, that would go into place.
Okay. So those are my concerns.
And I'll talk about a couple things, and I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Wright. She and I both attended the day at the Capitol with WASB, and so what that was an opportunity for us to hear from the state association, and some of us were a part of these discussions at the annual convention in Milwaukee. And so we had an opportunity to hear from a panel of bipartisan leaders, both sides, about what's happening in the education committee, and then also talk with our legislators, our assemblymen in our Senate, about this budget and how it could or could not impact the Oregon School District. And so what came out of those discussions, both from Milwaukee and from Madison, was what are the things that are more likely to occur that would benefit people across the state. And so I think that's why we arrived at the 1 through 4. One was, we think there can be agreement about special education funding. Right now, Wisconsin has a 31% reimbursement. So every dollar we spend on that we have to spend, we are mandated to spend on special education in every public school district in Wisconsin, we get 31 cents back. We shared with legislators that how that impacts the Oregon School District is, off the bat, $5 million of our budget has to come from the operating budget to special education. We think those services are very important. They're mandated. We would do them anyway. But that's a $5 million bill for us when the state is sitting on $7 billion. And so a reasonable ask is potentially to go up to 60%. The next is, which we're all familiar sitting around this table, which is mental health funding and other funding that we need to help our students who are struggling way before the pandemic. Pandemic exacerbated it to a certain extent, but that has been one-time funding. And we all know that you can't do much with one-time funding. You can't plan ahead. It takes, you rob Peter to pay Paul. And so that's where we're asking for recurring, sustainable funding. Then when you talk about the revenue limit, and that's what Andy's talking about, is there are school districts that are in our county that did not pass a referendum that are laying off teachers, right? We are so lucky here, but we've made this commitment to our community saying, if the state comes with money, they either need to give it back to you in a tax break, or if it comes to us, we'll think about giving that back. And so that's what we're talking about here is we want the state to make some decisions so that our people can afford to live here, right? And then the third is, we want sustainable funding, and we don't necessarily agree with the decision that, and we're not saying public or private schools or voucher schools should not get funding from the state. What we're saying is freeze that amount until they have to follow the same mandates that we do as a public school system, meaning special ed and all those sorts of things. And so as public schools, we don't necessarily agree that it's fair that more money should come out of the pot to go to private or voucher schools when they don't have to follow the same mandates that we have to follow. And so I think what we heard from legislator from both sides, and we've also heard from the governor, and we also know this to be a fact, that we all have to speak as one voice. So whether it's going to directly benefit the Oregon School District, or it's going to benefit Stoughton, or it's going to benefit my hometown in Thorpe, Wisconsin, which is, when I was there, it was 400 students, now it's done to 200, and they can't even find teachers because they can't pay them and they don't stay. So we are kind of all in this together. And so that's the genesis of this resolution, is that we are looking out for our school district, but we're looking out for public education in the state of Wisconsin. So Leslie, I'm going to turn it over to you to add to that.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to say that I would support this resolution based on everything that Krista has said and more. And then secondly, I'd kind of like to go on to talk about how fortunate we are to have an organization like WASB to be able to organize things like this for our Day at the Capitol and our education that we had in Milwaukee. But so for our Day at the Capitol, we were able to meet with, there's a legislative panel, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats that were asked questions, and it was a very vigorous session. They didn't always agree. Absolutely did not always agree. Fortunately, I did feel like that at least one of the Republicans was very open to doing more spending for education. I felt there was some reasonableness on that side as well. And trying not to make it a bipartisan or partisan issue, but actually trying to work together to help our kids, which was really fortunate to hear that, because really I feel like that's kind of been lacking in the past several years. And I feel like that needs to move and change. So I feel like that was a positive forward. And then we were able to meet with the staff from our legislators, where I feel like we're very fortunate in Dane County. There is huge support for education in Dane County on our legislators' part. I don't know that that's true everywhere, but I feel like, you know, they are starting to get the message. One of the things that came out of it, there is, and this is for everyone across the board, if you'd like to make comments about what you feel about the budget, for the governor's budget or what the legislator is going to do, there's a website, and it's kind of an obscure one. So it's legis, legis.wisconsin.gov/topics/budget comments. And that will enable you to go on there and actually make comments and put out there what you're interested in personally seeing in the budget and why. You know, and I think it is important that we actually get back to that. When we were there on the 22nd of March at the Capitol, WASB actually organized 110 meetings with legislators or staff for individual school board members to actually go and meet and be able to ask the questions and be able to stand up individually. But I agree that we really do need to stand up as a whole and say, this is what we need for our schools. We need to be able to support our schools and be able to fund our schools so that our kids benefit. And that's why I support this.
At this point in time, if there's any more clarifying questions, or we can put a motion on the table, which then there can be discussion or any amendments that people would like to offer.
I support to pass this resolution.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll open the floor for discussion. Go ahead, Troy.
So Tim, I really agree with your concern, and I too kind of have some of the same concerns, but I guess as I think about it more, I feel like without number 3, without us asking to raise the revenue limits, we really wouldn't have access to that $7.1 billion surplus that is available. So, you know, I feel like that number 3 is really required in order for us to get access to that surplus of money. And I don't know if Andy, if that's making sense to you, but you know, knowing that money comes from one of two places, it's either property tax or from the state. And how I read number 3 is that would allow us to provide property tax relief to our residents by accessing that surplus.
And I see your point. You know, part of the disconnect for me is that we told taxpayers during the referendum, lead up to the referendum, that, and if we do get money from the state in terms of categorical aid, we won't levy those dollars that we've been approved for in the referendum. In other words, if we get these dollars, $500 of categorical aid, we will reduce the need to levy that against our taxpayers. I just don't want to go back against the promises we made at referendum time. That's the biggest thing.
Understood, and I completely agree. That's a commitment we made as part of the referendum, that we would, you know, level the playing field. The dollar amount that we laid out for the 3-year referendum is what we've defined we needed to maintain our programs.
Yes.
And nothing more. So.
Correct. So if it comes in categorical aid through this effort, we're not gaining or losing anything, really, in the end. We're either getting it from the state or we're getting it from the taxpayer. We're not getting it from the taxpayer or getting it from the taxpayer.
And we actually had that conversation with our legislators in the room. We were in the room with Beloit and Stoughton and Mount Horeb. and really talked about the double dipping that has occurred, right? That we're going out to a referendum and we've paid, I'm talking about myself.
Yes.
I'm paying taxes for the referendum, and I've paid my property taxes to the state knowing that, hey, that money in the state of Wisconsin via the Constitution is dedicated, some of it, to public education.
Right.
Right now, that's not happening, so I'm being double dipped as a taxpayer. So we are all clear around this room that double dipping is happening, and so something's got to move. It's either got to be direct tax relief from the state to taxpayers, or it should come to schools, and then we can do what we've committed to do, right? Right now, zero is happening. So
correct.
this is an attempt to say, do something,
Yeah.
right? Go ahead, Anna.
So I appreciate the comments, and I agree with all that has been said regarding the concern over this revenue limit. But I guess I see it as a situation where we've gone and we have an approved operational referendum to bridge the gap, because we're set at a limit that the state has said you shall not get more money than this to run your schools. If they're setting that at a higher limit, we don't necessarily have to set the levy to account for all of the operational referendum funds that we've gone after. We now have legislative authority to collect those funds through the revenue limit that's been adjusted by the state. It doesn't hold us to continuing to levy at that full operational referendum amount. And I think everyone in this room is cognizant of the fact that we've made decisions to approve an operational referendum to bridge that gap, because we are at a limit that is not sustainable for the type of education we want to provide. So I agree with those comments, but I guess I see it as another board decision when we're setting our budget. At least we've been given a financial authority that's greater than what it is today to provide the services we know are needed in our schools. So I guess I'm going to support this as it's written, and I that's kind of my perspective on it.
Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the way it's worded right now. But the challenge that I have is what the failure of the state to fund the public schools, as there is a state constitutional requirement, is also creating this inequity across the districts in the state. We, as we've all said, are very fortunate to have had our operational referendum pass, but there are a number of school districts that have not, to your point earlier, Krista. And so then the school districts that don't have that community support are going to fall further and further behind. And yet there's a state constitutional requirement for the establishment of districts that are as equitable as feasible. And so I think the important part of this is to strongly encourage the state legislature to fund appropriately. And I agree. I don't love the wording, Tim, but that is where I think we have to encourage them to actually fund our students. So that's all.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you, everyone. Okay, done with action items. Moving on to D, discussion items. Committee reports. A, policy. Heather is not here, but next policy committee meeting is, Gina, when is it? Monday. Okay, it's Monday.
It's April 17th at 5 o'clock, and we are scheduled for virtual.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. B, vision steering. Troy.
Yeah, we met last week, Tuesday, and we had 2 agenda items. Number 1 was transportation. We had received an update from the administrative team on a new software system that we are implementing. It's a new routing and monitoring system for our buses. Some very nice enhancements for the system. I think it's going to allow our some great improvements to our transportation system. And then the second agenda item was Worth Woods, where we just discussed some planning for increasing the usability of the school forest. That is all.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, moving on to e-information items. We did have a school board election that also happened, and so because Anna was a candidate, as is tradition, she did not serve that clerk role. So Tim ably filled in for that, and then as also just as common knowledge too, that Katie is our election administrator for this district. That position that does not rest with the clerk. So I want to make sure to thank Katie, because that is a lot of work to manage an election, even with uncontested seats. It's a lot of contacts working with how many municipalities?
Yes, 11.
11. So it's a lot of detail work, and so you do it beautifully. So I want to make sure that we thank you publicly for all your work on that. So I will turn it over to Tim because he handled the canvassing and has the official results.
Great, thank you. Yes, Katie brought us together. Andy, Candace, and I got together with Katie to go through the election results. They were each area, there were 3 different areas. Each of them were uncontested. In Area 1, Anna won by a total vote count of 7,147 votes. In Area 2, Heather won with a total vote count of 7,057 votes. And in Area 3, Caleb Bush won with a total vote count of 6,951 votes.
Great, thank you, Tim. Congratulations, Anna. Congratulations, Heather. And Caleb is here, so congratulations, Caleb. We look forward to welcoming you on the board. All right, moving on to, and those were amazing turnout numbers.
Yes.
For a spring election, so 7,000 votes, so that might be a record for a school board election. Okay, moving on to e-information item 2, visioning and strategic planning, and then teaching and learning update, because I know our visitors are anxious that sugar's wearing off from those cupcakes.
I will be brief with our visioning and strategic planning update for that exact purpose. I wasn't thinking of it, but now I better. So if we go to our framework, you can clearly see a lot of the work, and based on our work together, what has been accomplished. And we have a very important next step, and that will be our district office and district office and school board workshop on May 22nd. And I'm delighted to say that our longtime district friend, Jim Merkabah, will be facilitating it for us to give us a refresher on policy governance. But then the part that's connected to the visioning and strategic planning is when the district office administrators will be sharing the 3-year goals and objectives. And with that, I'll move on to the crux of our mission, teaching and learning, and Mr. Tanner will tell you what's going on.
All right, I'm not even going to sit down. If you guys want to come on up, you can, or whatever. Tonight I wanted to share, this is just a great opportunity. Our teaching and learning update is going to be about Skills USA. So Skills USA is an organization that engages students in career and technical education. So we have representatives from our tech ed department. They're going to talk about, you can have a seat, we'll just pass this around. I'm just standing so there's enough chairs for everybody here. So anyway, so what's really cool about Skills USA is kind of like, I was trying to think of it. You're going to tell them what it actually is, but basically it's a nationwide organization. And what's cool about it is it's sort of like an extension of career and tech ed. So it's the analogy that I like to use, and you guys can tell me if this is a good analogy or not, because I didn't ask you, is that like we have music students and they go to state solo ensemble and they compete to see how they do. Or like if you're business ed, we have DECA. So it's kind of like an extension with competition beyond the classroom learning. But it's a really awesome way for kids to show, young adults, sorry, not kids, students to show their expertise in sort of a competitive manner. And what's actually really exciting about Skills USA is like we pretty regularly have people who go to state and win and actually go to nationals, which is really awesome. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Hawkinson, who is one of the Skills USA coaches and one of our tech ed teachers, and then he will give his information and introduce our students, and I will go sit down.
Awesome. Thanks, John. As John mentioned, my name is Eric Hawkinson. For those that don't know, I'm a Skills USA advisor, but I also coach within the district and help out in a number of other ways. 14 years ago, I was hired by the Oregon School District, and I got immediately involved in Skills USA. I did not have this opportunity when I was in high school, and I had a presenter in college come and tell me about what Skills USA was in our tech ed club. And I knew as a tech ed teacher, I was doing a disservice if we did not have this within public schools. And so Skills USA empowers our members to become world-class workers, leaders, and responsible American citizens. We have students who compete in automotive, electronics technology, related technical math, CO2 car dragsters, PC servicing, urban search and rescue robotics, architecture, and technical drafting. We have a number of state champions, national qualifiers over the past 14 years that I've been here. We have hosted multiple district competitions, which our district is District 4. We hosted this past fall in December, which would roughly about 200 students attended and competed in over 20 different competitions. For the first time, we attended every Skills USA regional in the state of Wisconsin that was not canceled because of snow. From Kenosha to Platteville, all the way up to Wausau. So we would leave at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, drive all the way up, compete all day, and then come all the way back that day. But now I'd like to turn it over to some of our competitors.
I'm Jonathan Krieger. I'm a senior this year, and I primarily compete in technical drafting, which mostly consists of creating blueprints or drawings of parts that show you the size of them and how they're made. I've really enjoyed participating in Skills USA because it's exposed me to engineering and problem solving in a way that kind of just added to in-school learning, and been something I've enjoyed doing, and it's been very rewarding.
My name's Andrew Hensel. I'm a junior this year, and I just picked up Skills USA, halfway through this year, because I was looking for a place to showcase my technical skills and advance them more. And I've really found a lot of good learning in the competitions and in Mr. Hawkinson's classes and all that stuff to hopefully help my career someday. And I've made a lot of new friends along the way too. So.
My name is Morgan Spindler. I'm also a junior here at OHS. One of my favorite things about Skills so far this year is just being able to visit and tour so many different technical colleges that I would have never even known existed had I not visited them through Skills.
I'm Logan Schumann. I compete in the architectural drafting competition, and what I value the most is just the real-world applicability of the Skills USA competition, and it really exposes you to just real-world scenarios and career options.
Lastly, I'd just like to say that our state Skills USA competition is coming up at the Alliant Energy Center and Madison College. So some of the competitions are held at the Alliant, some are held at Madison College on campus at the Truex. Wednesday, April 26th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. This is an open event to the public. As far as I've been a part of it, they have not charged any fees. Anybody can walk in and just see all the great things that are happening, both high school students competing, middle school students competing, and college students competing. So you'll see all sorts of great things. And we, Oregon High School, will have 9 students competing at the state event this year. So thank you for your time.
Before we let you go, I know a couple of the guys that are sitting next to you, but I think they have some pretty exciting plans after high school, and I think it's always fun for us to hear when we talk about Portrait of a Graduate, what they're learning here and where they're going and what they're doing. So I'd love for them to share, if they're willing, kind of their plans after they leave OHS.
And I think we forgot to mention, Jonathan had the opportunity. He was our state champion last year, and he got second at nationals. So only the first person in every state in that competition goes and represents the state. And so you're sitting in a room with 50 other people from all over the United States. And so that was just amazing. But
next year I'm planning on going to UW-Madison and to study engineering further. I want to go into aerospace engineering eventually, and I think that doing Skills USA has really kind of prepared me for that and given me a nice insight into it.
Anybody else care to share?
Sure. Well, I do electronics for the Skills USA, and I think I'm gonna like major in electrical engineering or computer science degree or something along those lines.
So I compete in related technical math as well as the Urban Search and Rescue robotics competition. My plan is to attend a 4-year university and probably major in electrical engineering with a focus in robotics.
My plan is to pursue aerospace and aircraft design post high school. And my plan is to continue teaching here.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask? This is really great. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Eric, for all your good work. I appreciate it. And we're happy to hear your plans as well. Okay, superintendent's report.
I apologize for my scratchy voice. So we'll just have to muddle through tonight. But as far as the superintendent's report, our first big thank you is recognizing our associate principals and administrative interns. And you see here, April 3rd to 7th was National Assistant Principal Week. And I understand their job. It's a job I had for 7 years of my career. So I understand what it means to serve in this role, the connections you make with kids, and the way you're able to support your colleagues throughout your school. They're pretty incredible people, and we're fortunate to have every one of them. And then next, another person we are fortunate to have, our high school principal, Mr. Pliner, is the 2023 principal leader for the Herb Cole Educational Foundation. We were immensely proud that he was recognized in this way, and the fact that he is choosing to be here with us because he does great things for our students and our staff every single day. The next one, we have students in Miss Zimmerman's class at Prairie View Elementary showing us that they love to read. Classrooms across the district continue to focus on fundamental lifelong learning skills, particularly in the foundations of reading. Our staff has done a lot of professional development on this recently, and as was mentioned at the last meeting, we have selected our new curriculum. Prairie View also had a service project. Their 4th grade student leadership team chose to fundraise for the Dane County Humane Society as their service project this year. And the students made posters, they wrote school announcements, they sat at a booth during conference nights in March. The team was able to raise $351.40 to donate to the Humane Society, and they gathered a variety of items for animals at the shelter. I think this is an excellent example of our students starting very early in achieving the skills of portrait of a graduate. Oh, and another fun thing, Miss Winterberg's class at Forest Edge. They recently engaged in a special penny surface tension project. When you slowly drop water onto a penny, the water molecules attract one another, resulting in high surface tension. Students observed how the tension creates a bubble-like shape and counted how many drops they could put on a penny before the bubble burst. And you can see there is quite a bit of rapt attention into this particular science experiment. So that's pretty special for Miss Winterberg's 3rd grade class. And then our Forest Edge multilingual program students had a field trip. They went on a field trip to the school forest right behind their school to identify trees, plants, and animal tracks. And on this field trip, they practiced language and scientific concepts. So way to go, kids. And then we also have a recent display from Forest Edge. It's a project focusing on exhibiting an asset-based mindset on what they can do. And they also integrated technology by using a QR code with their voice reading the words. So you'd be able to go up and scan it and hear them talking about the best parts of me. Yeah. And then we also had Forest Edge had an elementary composer in residence. This was the drummer Soa Mensah from Ghana, and he came as a composer in residence at Forest Edge. But it benefited more than Forest Edge because it was the drum ensemble, which pulls from multiple schools, who were able to learn from Mr. Mensah. So thank you, Ms. Wyman, for coordinating this once-in-a-lifetime experience. I attended the concert, and it was very special. And then RCI also had band composer visits. So the 6th grade band students recently received messages from the composers of the pieces they are currently learning. They were able to hear from composer Jay Coles, who spoke about his inspiration for the piece Against the Clock, and shared some inspiring words about the importance of music in schools. And they also heard from composer Haley Woodrow, who spoke about her musical background, her journey into composition, and some insight into her piece, Dark Mountain. The students were excited to see and hear directly from composers, which really was very similar to the Forest Edge experience I just described. They were able to learn about the composition process and the intention behind the music. So thank you for Mr. Wesson for creating this learning experience. And congratulations to all of our students in grades 6 through 12 from the Oregon School District who participated in this year's annual Wisconsin School Music Association Solo and Ensemble Festival. It happened last month. Oregon was actually a site this year, and so we want to thank our music educators and all the really amazing volunteers for assisting in this event. It really was quite an undertaking. The solo and ensemble offers students the opportunity to learn the discipline of rehearsal, challenges them in the nuances of their musical skills, and allows them to perform in front of an audience and offers student feedback on the performance. We're very proud, as usual, of our student musicians, and we love hearing their music and watching them perform. And then our middle and elementary school had a collaborative project together here. This is pretty cool. So 7th grade in Miss Galicia's English Language Arts class, they engaged in a project in which they wrote original picture books for students at Forest Edge. So prior to writing the books, the 7th graders held virtual meetings to better understand topics that elementary students were interested in and books that they would enjoy reading and what they look for in nonfiction picture books. So the students in 7th grade then used this information to better tailor the books to their audience. In addition to completing the project, some other important things occurred. Miss Jakey's kindergarten class was so excited to read the books that they decided to make their own class story that they then also illustrated. And the 7th graders loved watching and hearing from the kindergarten authors. And 1st graders in Mrs. Weig's class were the rock stars, answering all of the questions over the Google Meet call. They seemed to have an endless list of subjects they wanted to learn more about. That's pretty cool. And Mrs. Barth's 2nd grade class was so impressed with the books they read that they decided to give awards specifically catered toward each book and their creator. So the 7th graders felt very honored to each get a special award for the book that they wrote. So thank you so much to our middle school and Forest Edge teachers for this collaboration. That's pretty special for everybody involved. And then our German club students did a service project. They created handmade cards for residents in the Beehive home in Oregon. The special notes served to spread a little spring cheer and teach a few German words. So many thanks to all those, Ms. Washensky in particular, who helped make this happen, because she helped our students prepare to learn and then share these acts of kindness with our community. This is a fun one. Look at this. These are our wonderful Calc teachers who are coming together to show their enthusiasm for Pi Day. So there was a big celebration for Pi Day on March 13th, or 3/14. And this, of course, is the mathematical symbol used to represent a constant, the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter, which diameter, which is approximately 3.14. We love that our students and staff are so excited about math. You see pie shoes, pie buttons, pie shirts, and you see pie things hanging from the ceiling. So there was definitely a lot of pie that day. And this enthusiasm, wouldn't you know it, leads to students who are coming out with top honors for high school math and the math team. So congratulations to our high school math team. They received top honors at the Wisconsin State Mathematics Competition. In addition, the following individuals received all state honors. We have Maya Yadhav, Zeke Jeske, and Jonathan Krieger. All were first All-State team. Congratulations. And second All-State team, Will Cram, Cameron Eck, Ryan Fahey, and Owen McKee. So thanks to Mr. Ebert for coaching this team. I think we have a math team dynasty happening, yes. And then we also had the regional German speaking contest. So our OHS German students participated in the Wisconsin version of the American Association of Teachers of German Regional German Speaking Contest. It was held at the middle school and coordinated by Frau Waschensky. So Herr Dyer's students prepared German poetry recitations and various topics for conversations. Those moving on to the state contest at Marquette University, so this is a big deal. Vinnie Halverson, Aislinn Kavan, Owen Pfaffel, Luca Elmer, Hannah Minzer, Nathan Drotsky, and Jacob Worden. Congratulations to all of them. And then this is really cool. So our students excel in every aspect of their education. And right now we want to congratulate the Oregon High School 2023 Wisconsin Federal Junior Duck Stamp contestants. So our high school students have an outstanding showing in this competition. Sarah Waterworth's work was selected from over 400 other pieces as best of show. So that's pretty amazing. This is Oregon High School's 4th state Best of Show title in the last 5 years. Sarah's piece will move on to the national competition held later this month in Arlington, Virginia. So we had quite a few students in the grades 7 through 9 group. Noah Derrick had a first place ranking. In the grades 10 through 12, Sarah Waterworth and Naya Perez were first place. Second place ranking, Mars Grooms, Nina Adrev, and Selena Armstrong. Third place ranking, Sam Templeton, Liz Sorbet, and Bryn Last. And then we had many students with honorable mentions. So our students really do excel in this art competition. And then our FCCLA state champions, we have here, let me see if I can find it with the two young people with Miss Byarski. We had Josh Menendez take a silver, Quinn Wirtz do silver and bronze and top scorer in his event, and Audrey Maples took a bronze. So this is the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, or FCCLA. We also had the National Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. It looks like our students were in the Milwaukee Art Museum, if you look at the picture. So there was a Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. It's the nation's longest running, most prestigious recognition initiative for creative teens and the largest source of scholarships for young artists and writers. Each year, the Milwaukee Art Museum honors the original and innovative artwork of students, artwork created by students in grades 7 through 12 from across the state. This year, honors go to seniors Emma. She received a gold key, and Michaela, she was an honorable mention. Emma's mixed media piece will compete for national scholarships. Next for OHS artists will be the celebration of National Fine Arts Week, and their art will be showcased in the art gallery beginning Thursday, April 13th, so this week. And then Advanced Woodworking had the competition called Shut the Box. And that is Students in Mr. Stace Advanced Woods class are hard at work making their shut-the-box games. There are multiple skills needed to create these pieces, and students are attending to every last detail, from box construction to laser printing the numbers. Each unique box will undoubtedly be a keepsake and provide enjoyment for years to come. So it'll be exciting to see the finished product. And then OHS, many of our students took a trip to Costa Rica over spring break. 24 students, Spanish students, had the opportunity to travel to Costa Rica. They stayed with Costa Rican families in order to immerse themselves in language and culture. They toured coffee plantations, pineapple plantations, visited a volcano, and relaxed in thermal waters from the volcano. Students also traveled to the rainforest and stayed in an eco lodge and were woken up in the morning to howler monkeys and toucans. The students also whitewater rafted, zip-lined, took a cooking class that taught us how to make pantacones and gallo pinto, and also took a Latin dance class. The students were able to volunteer at a local school, donate school supplies, and paint their playground for them. What a fabulous trip. Pura vida. And then just a reminder to turn into the OST podcast. We've had some really good ones lately. The one on school safety with Chief Pagankoff. And then I had a very fun time sitting down with most of our foreign exchange students to hear about their perspective on Oregon High School as a student coming from Europe and how the change has been for them. That was really fun to listen to. They are full of interesting observations on American culture. And then...
All right, so moving on to closing. Future agenda. Our next meeting is April 24th. That is the organizational meeting. So Dr. Bergstrom will open that meeting before we determine our leadership for that. And then last is checkout. And as we mentioned, this is a very special meeting. It is Tim Lebrun's last meeting after 6 years on the service to the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom to say a few words, and then we'll do an interesting little checkout. We'll let everybody say a few words before we go, and then end with Tim's final comments, as is tradition.
Well, I think it's important to be able to acknowledge all that Mr. Lebrun has contributed to all of us, to our learning as a body, but then also to the attitude that he brings to all the decision making that happens here. It's always about our students. No matter what, throughout many challenging times in his tenure on the board, it's always been about our students. And it's always been approached with kindness and compassion and a strong sense of responsibility to our community. And from a deep, deep appreciation for public service. And we feel that, and I think we've all grown because of that. And I can say nothing but many thanks and appreciations for all you've given our students.
All right, who'd like to go next? Troy.
Well, Tim, it has been a true pleasure to serve on this board with you for 5 years. I first got to know your family through Kelly. Kelly was teaching at the elementary school when she had taught your daughters, your twin daughters, and she had just raved about your family, and she would come home and say, you got to get to know the Lebrun family. It's just a really neat family. And I actually got to know Susie first, I think, professionally, and then I got to know you and through school board, and Kelly was more than right. Just an incredible family that I've really admired for a long time, and I've really enjoyed not only serving with you on the board, but getting to know you personally and hanging out with you. You've been so dedicated to this board. You come to these meetings every time prepared, doing the work, doing the homework, and it's just been a pleasure to have you on the team and to have someone that is so dedicated and works so hard. And I think you clearly work hard in life, but you also, what I admire is that you're so balanced, and you optimize your life in a way that allows you to value the time with the people that are important to you. And I love hearing the stories of your travels and how you're always seeing your children, and I just have a great appreciation for how you balance your life. And you always have such a positive outlook. You always take on any challenge with a smile. I love that about you. One of your many famous quotes or Timisms. You're known for your financial perspective, but the favorite quote that I have is that something to the effect of, I don't like to spend money, and when it's someone else's money, I like to spend it even less. And that's just such an important viewpoint to have, and I really appreciate that, and I've learned from that as we sit at this board table, it's really important to remember where the money comes from, and it comes from the constituents that we represent. And I think oftentimes elected officials forget that, and so I really appreciate you expressing that strong conviction. Tim, people in this community, they really trust you, and it's really for a good reason, because you have impeccable character, and you mean what you say, and you do what you say. And again, just such a great asset to have had you on this board. But I do want to end with just talking about how you've impacted the youth in this community, not only from all of the things that you've accomplished on the board, but you've been a mentor through the mentor program. And I know you've really informally mentored the youth in the community in other ways as well. With my son Blake, a few years ago, you had hired him to help you with some yard work. And it was much more than that, though, because you really taught him things beyond just the job that he was doing to help you out. You really took it upon yourself to teach him how important it was to make a phone call and have direct communication with an adult, and set clear expectations, and working with him to make sure that he could perform the work independently. And I'm certain that there were many Timisms that were conveyed along the way. But I just want to recognize the time and the effort that you often take to work with our youth and educate our youth in this community, really to make this community better. So I just want to say, Tim, it's been a great pleasure. I really look up to you and admire the service that you've committed to this community. So thank you.
Mary.
So, yeah, I only got to serve with you for 2.5 years, really, 2 years. 2 years on the board. But I have known you from your other work in the community, which is just voluminous. Your work with the Knights of Columbus, the Optimist Club. You are a huge part of this community, and I truly value your input. Your input as a board member. You always come at things from a very straightforward perspective. You're able to cut through a lot of complex issues and really distill it down. And so I have learned in the last 2 years a tremendous amount just from listening to your questions and having you educate me, particularly on the financial components of our discussions. So I very much appreciate your input, and I look forward to seeing you out and about in the community and enjoying your retirement.
Yeah.
Leslie.
So I too am unfortunate that I only got to serve with you this past year, and I didn't have the additional perspective of getting to know you from other places, but I really have appreciated your balanced outlook on things, and that your heart, the passion that comes through with how you care about the students in this community and our school as a whole, this community, and it comes through, it just shines through in every single meeting that you've ever been in. And even whether you agreed with other people on the board or you disagreed with other people on the board, you did it with kindness, and you did it in such a way that everybody understood your point and whether that swayed them or not, it didn't matter. You did it with kindness, and nobody walked away thinking, "Oh gosh, that guy," or thinking, "Man, Tim hates me," kind of thing. There was none of that. There was such a kindness and a balance to it while making your points. And I wish that I would have gotten to serve with you longer, because I think that I love I knew it was going to be an education thing, and that is quite a perspective to take. And it's a wonderful perspective to have, is that you're going to keep learning about it and keep learning how to work and do the best for your community. And I think that even though you're going into your retirement, I can't imagine that you're not going to continue to do that. So thank you for your education to all of us.
Tough acts to follow here. Boy, oh boy. Tim, it has really been a privilege to serve on the board with you. It is obvious that you are committed to a high quality education in our district. And I love hearing your stories about how it's impacted your family and your kids, and that you're giving back that same opportunity to our community today. It's awesome. You are going to be very missed on the board. You ask great questions. You bring clarity to a lot of the complex things we talk about, and you're just great. So, gonna miss you. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your dedication, and enjoy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Is this kind of hard listening to everybody talk about you? Well, you got one more. Sorry. We've served together for 6 years, and we've known each other long before that. You are a treasured friend. You know, I feel like we can have conversations about a lot of different topics, and you listen and you share a lot of information and look at things in a really unique perspective, like people have said, and it really brings value to everybody's life. And I think it's a special characteristic when people talk with you, they feel like you're just focused on them, and they feel very important when you're kind of in their orbit. But I just really want to talk about and make sure people know what a dedicated public servant you are. I think you have the value of the more that you give, the more that you get. And so you have been such a critical part of this community for a long time. And as Mary talked about some of the things that you did before the school district, but I think it's because you're such a proud dad, and you get emotional when you talk about your kids and what they've gotten from this Oregon school district, but you want that for every kid. And that's a really special thing, and that's such an amazing characteristic of a school board member, is when you treat every kid like they're your own kid. And you know how important education is. And before this meeting, you gave a lot of credit to the school district about your kids, and you take a lot of credit for that. You're an amazing dad, and your kids are super lucky to have you as their dad, and for somebody that gave them the opportunity for all the things that they had in their life as they went through the Oregon School District. So we are super thankful to have had this experience with you. The school district is better because of you, and that will happen for a long time. So before you speak, we need to give you your little plaque of service. So presented to Tim LeBrun from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards for your dedicated service to the Oregon School District Board of Education from April 2017 to April 2023. So we will have a picture once the floor is yours.
Oh my gosh, I'm so humbled. I had to write this down because I'm not real great at speaking off the cuff. And so please forgive me in advance if I pause longer than necessary. I want to thank all of you here. And frankly, I want to thank those who aren't here, but who have, over the last 6 years, taken the time to address this board, or me individually, either in person, by email, or by phone. Know that I have appreciated your input, your professionalism, and the education and emotion it has taken to work through some challenging times and overcoming those challenges over the last 6 years. Thank you for uncovering my blind spots, and for your grace and willingness to help me see your perspective. Some of you may have heard me say, as Henry Ford once remarked, whenever two people always agree, One of them is unnecessary. Thank you for being necessary. As many of you know, we are not perfect. I am surely not perfect. But I and my fellow board members have always been dedicated to making the best collective decisions we can, given the time, knowledge, and the personal and professional experience we each bring to this boardroom each month. I hope you know and have seen my time here has always been focused on what is best for the students in our district. And so I want to thank you, the community, for your trust. We may be friends through our kids, through church, through Boy Scouts or Oregon Youth Hockey. You may be my neighbor or someone who rang me up at Bill's or Quick Trip. You may be the officer or the shining star who we recognized at the Optimist meeting or the family I plowed out this winter. Thank you for your trust. I want to thank Krista for your friendship, but also for your boundless energy, your unflappable professionalism, and steady, strong leadership through some very, very challenging moments, and equally through the district's greatest triumphs. I want to thank Dr. Bergstrom for your long-term commitment to our district and our students. I strongly believe that your student-centered compass has always been unwavering and is always pointing forward. Further, I want you to know, for me, you stand as a stellar example of commitment, empathy, and decision-making, which always considers what's best for our students. I want to thank the A-team, the administrative team, Gina, Andy, Erica, Shannon, Darcy, John, Candace, and Larry, and the school leadership teams, educators, and paraprofessionals. And surely, I want to thank Katie. I surely want to thank Katie for keeping me on schedule and keeping me clear on my board responsibilities. Thank you for your example to our students and to our community. The consistency and energy by which you carry out your work is truly remarkable. It's why we moved here 32 years ago. And why we were then and now the most sought out district in this county. I want to thank my fellow board members, Krista, Troy, Anna, Dr. Lakuta, Leslie, and Heather. I miss Heather being here. I want her to know that. I do miss that, and I knew she wasn't going to be here. I've learned a lot from you as board members, as parents, and as community members, and as public servants. You've not only become colleagues, but friends, and for that I am deeply grateful. Entrepreneur and author and motivational speaker Jim Rohn once said, "We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with." You have truly upped my average. Truly upped my average. Finally, and yes, most importantly, I want to thank my wife, Susie, who knows how much time and patience this takes. I want to thank our 4 kids, Elliot, Alex, Maddie, and Nina, who spent all of their primary and secondary education in the Oregon School District and who have turned out to be smart. Excuse me. And productive adults. As someone mentioned, it is literally because of you and your experiences I am here. In conclusion, I want to recognize one more very important person who I look up to every day. Jim Pliner. Who was recognized as the 2023 Herb Cole Educational Foundational Principal with an AL leader. I think I can say Mr. Pliner speaks for all of us when he recently said, it really is important to understand we are all in the people business. My job is to do all I can do to build a positive learning community for all students and staff. We have amazing people that come to this school each and every day. They all need to feel supported, valued, and challenged. Our motto is, it's about kids. It's about learning, and it's about the relentless pursuit of better together. We try to live that every day. Me too. Thank you. Thanks so much.
So what is typically tradition is if we were going to end here, you would get to do the motion to adjourn, but now we're going into closed session, so you have to do it behind
Yes.
closed doors, okay?
Very good.
All right, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes, and then we'll be in closed session. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent.